Welcome, fellow bookworms, to Tibra's Den. My name is Whitney, and today I'm going to be doing an author highlight. I had this author reach out to me to ask if I wanted to read and review his book, Bound by Blood. It is a Christian horror book, which sounds really interesting to me, and I'm excited to give it a try. The premise sounds interesting, and yeah, I hope I really like it, so that's what I'm going to be doing in this video. So the book is about two brothers. One is part of a demonic cult and one is part of a Christian church who are battling for territory. It says, combat lines are drawn, angels and demons square off as brother goes against brother. The spoils of war are human souls. Who will rise victorious and at what cost? And yeah, simple synopsis, but it sounds really, really good. And I'm excited to give it a go. I'm always looking for Christian authors who I'll enjoy, and Christian horror, I think, is just a subgenre that you're not seeing a lot of. So I'm excited about that one. And I was looking, and it does seem like Shawn has one other book called Pets for Legion that came out in 2021. So if I enjoy this one, I will definitely be checking out that one because it sounds interesting as well. That one is about a local school paraprofessional named Sasha James, and she ends up rescuing a child from a mysterious assailant and unknowingly marks herself as the next target. To survive this unnatural foe, she will need to search deeper than the physical, pray for power beyond the natural, and fight like there's no tomorrow. So that one sounds really, really good as well. Like I said, depends on how Bound by Blood goes. But that is the main focus of this video because that is the book I got sent. And I'm excited to jump into it. So I'll probably hop on when I'm about 50% of the way through, give you kind of my initial thoughts, and then once I finish it, I will give you my final thoughts. So I will be right back with you. Okay, so I have finished Bound by Blood by Shawn David Brink. And this book, so I enjoyed the book itself. I think the story itself had a lot of substance to it. I really enjoyed so the synopsis was a little bit misleading because I do think it led me to believe there was going to be like this big epic battle, and that was not the case at all. Basically, you have two identical twin brothers, and they both grow up in a house where their mom's an addict. There's always strange men in and out. And so the one brother ends up leaving and he ends up going to join a cult. The other brother stays for a while, but then ends up leaving and starts searching for the brother Jason, who has already left. The other brother's name is Seth. So Seth leaves a little while later, goes off to look for Jason. Jason finds him and was like, come join the kinship with me. There's this prophecy, and so come join us, basically. And there's like a blood oath and such. And so he kind of goes through with this blood oath, and they're supposed to go and kill these Christians at Zion's Hill, which is a church. Seth ends up backing out, and he later becomes a member of this church. So it's kind of brother against brother, and they're both, one is part of a cult, one is part of the church. And the prophecy still needs to be fulfilled because this cult wants the power that comes with the prophecy. So they're still trying to get Seth to join them. And now they're starting to resort to more nefarious means to get him to join with them. And so Seth is kind of struggling with, does he, forsake Jesus and in order to save people, or even though it's hard to do, does he trust in Jesus and stay the line, essentially? And so I really like that duality. I love that so much. I like kind of the mind games. Like, it's not, there is some guns and knives and such, but it's a lot of mind games with the demons that are part of this cult, like the spirits that are part of this cult. It's a lot of mind games with them, which I really liked. I really enjoyed that aspect. At one point, they have like a prophetess in the church, and she is helping one of the other members, and is singing Amazing Grace, which I adored that because I love like music. I love the old hymns. I love more modern Christian music. Like there's just something that's so moving about the music. So that aspect of it, like I really enjoyed that. I did like how the ending played out, though I will say kind of, I don't want to give it away, so I'm going to be kind of ambiguous here, but the way it played out with the remaining cult members and the way it played out with their mom, because their mom is part of the story a little bit as well, wasn't very realistic. Um, and I did not enjoy that part as much. But otherwise, how the ending played out, I did really enjoy. The biggest thing with this book, it needed a lot of editing. It really felt like a first draft because there was a lot of typos, misspelled words. Uh, the like healed was spelled with a double E instead of a EA. Bizarre wasn't spelled right. And then just typos like it was supposed to be of and it was if, or had an E added on accidentally, things like that. So it needed editing in that regard. And also things got very repetitive as far as description wise. And so like there's this hallway where the cult is, and the author described it as serpent like and like an open maw of a serpent multiple times. He would describe things like a fish on a hook multiple times. So that kind of got repetitive, and it needed a little bit more development because it was very kind of flat, and it was he thought this, he did this, they said this kind of thing. And so there wasn't a lot of development or personality to the characters. The characters, you did kind of get an idea of them, but it needed more like description and more development in that aspect. But overall, I really enjoyed the writing, and I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more even without that development if all those editing errors hadn't been there, like if it had been better edited. But I would say, like, if you're kind of looking for a little bit darker of Christian fiction, I wouldn't, it's said it's Christian horror, but the horror element, like, yeah, you have the demons and such, and there are definitely kind of like spooky scenes, but it wasn't like horror. So, like, if you don't just read Christian fiction and you do read other genres like I do, and horror is one of those, then it's probably not as horror-esque as you would want. But for Christian fiction, I do think it is leans on the horror side with some of like the scenes and such. So keep that in mind. But I thought it was really interesting, and I would say go ahead and give this author a try. I am going to read Pets for Legion, which is the first book this author wrote back in 2021. I think it said it was published. And so I did go ahead and buy that myself. The author sent me Bound by Blood, but I am interested in just seeing what that one's about because that premise seems a little bit more up my alley. So I do plan on picking that one up, and then I will come back on and give you my thoughts on that one as well, just so we kind of have a better sense of this author. But if you're looking for Christian horror that's a little bit darker, I will say when he contacted me, because I've mentioned multiple times I don't like books, Christian fiction, that get really preachy, or ones that say, oh, just find God and everything is magically okay. That's not the case in this one, minus a little bit at the end with the way things played out. It was a little bit like that, just find God and everything's okay. But it was never preachy. And I like the preacher in the story does have his own struggles as well, which I really like that. And so, yeah, I did appreciate that about this book. So I do want to get a sense of this author's writing a little bit more with Pets for Legion, which is, like I said, I think it's going to be right a little bit more up my alley. I've already kind of told you what that one's about, I believe. And so, yeah, I'm going to read that, and then I will be back on to give you my thoughts on that one and kind of wrap up this video. So I am back. I have finished up Pets for Legion, and I am really glad I decided to read Pets for Legion instead of just Bound by Blood. The author reached out to me to read Bound by Blood, and then I chose to read Pets for Legion on my own. And I'm really glad I did, because it gave me a better sense of the author, one, and two, I really loved Pets for Legion. It still had some of the problems that I had with Bound by Blood, but not to the same extent. And the story wise, I enjoyed the story itself a lot more. And so basically in Pets for Legion, you're following the school teacher, and her name is Sasha, and she works at the school, and she sees a kid getting attacked, and everybody's just kind of standing around, like not intervening, and she's like, what the heck? And so she ends up going and saving the kid, which then makes her the target. And so she ends up going on the run, and these two men are chasing her, and they're trying to. She thinks they're trying to kill her. They're just trying to capture her, because the two men, you have Chief and Clay, and Chief has made a deal with the demons of Legion to bring them pets in order to get power to kind of enact revenge, because he was bullied a lot by the people of the town, who he grew up with and such. When he was growing up, he was bullied a lot by them, so he kind of wants to get revenge for that. And so he makes the deal, he'll bring Legion pets to play with and ultimately get their souls, and then he'll have power to take out the people he wants to take out. And so Clay is a golem, so he's not very intelligent. And I love the interaction between Chief and Clay just in general. Like, he was just funny. Like, I found Clay there to be humor there, and I really enjoyed that aspect. I kind of just the exasperation of Chief, like when dealing with this golem, like it was just so fun and so funny, and I really enjoyed that. And obviously, it's a darker book. It definitely this one I feel like was more so leaning towards the horror thriller than Bound by Blood. I think this one definitely fit the horror vibes and the thrillery vibes a lot better. And so yeah, so Sasha's on the run from these men, and she doesn't have a clue why they're targeting her, like what's going on, and then she ends up meeting Xavier, Reverend Xavier Hernandez, and he kind of feels called by God to help this woman, so he does so. And then you also have a police officer named Simon who gets involved as well. And I really like kind of that fast-paced thriller aspect, and her being on the run and they're after her. It was really enjoyable. And then the second half, I don't want to give anything away, but the second half kind of changes a little bit, and it's a different situation. And I really loved the second half and the way that played out. And yeah, just had a great time with this book. I ended up giving it 4 stars. It could have been a 5 star. And the reason it didn't get 5 stars for me, I would say the characters could have used a little bit more depth. Like, there wasn't a lot of depth to the characters, but it didn't affect the book in the same way it did for in Bound by Blood. Because in Bound by Blood, you're really looking at the characters and you have that duality and such. So lacking that depth kind of made the story less enjoyable, because the plot wasn't as big of a part of it. Where in this one, it was very plot heavy, very fast paced, and that was the focus of the book. So not having that depth to the characters didn't really ruin the enjoyment of the stories, but there were still a lot of typos. Not as many as in Bound by Blood, but there were still typos and misspelled words, which I read every word. I know some people just skim as they're reading. I read every word, so I really pick up on these things. Um, and so yeah, that part, would take me out of the story a little bit. And the author, again in this one, and this is the book he wrote, in 2021. So I believe he wrote this book before he wrote Bound by Blood. But this one had less errors, but they were still present. And the author still really relies on like similes and metaphors and such instead of describing the scene, which they definitely have their place, and some of them really worked, but some of them just didn't really work. And it's just, I wish it had been more descriptive versus relying on those things. And so that dropped it down for me a little bit. And again, it's not to the extent as it was in Bound by Blood. Um, but those were the two big things, the errors and then just the reliance on simile and metaphors. But overall, it wasn't as repetitive as in Bound by Blood. It was better done. This book was better done. And like I said, I really did enjoy Bound by Blood, and I think with more editing and revision, that story could, be a lot more enjoyable. But this one was just more up my alley. And it didn't have the mistakes and such to the extent that Bound by Blood did. So I was able to enjoy it a lot more as well. And so yeah, I had a fantastic time. I liked how it played out. Um, I don't, have anything that would kind of like, oh, that was too convenient or anything like that. I wish we had gotten a little bit more explanations for things that had wrapped up on like the police end of everything. Um, and how maybe that part wrapped up. Because Chief is a prominent figure in the community. I'll just say that. And so it would have been interesting to see, how the events, how, like that part of everything got wrapped up. I would have liked that. But other than that, like it's a quick summary. And it's like 1 year later and you see our three characters and kind of what's going on with them. So I did like that. And yeah, I just had a great time with this. If you're looking for Christian fiction that kind of leans towards horror slash thriller, I would definitely say check out this author. As far as I know, like what I can see on Goodreads and such, there's just the two books, and I think he has some stories in like an anthology, but it's just the two books so far. But I definitely think this is an author to keep an eye out if that's something you're looking for. And I would highly recommend Pets for Legion, and I would say, you pick up Bound by Blood as well, but just kind of lower your expectations on that one. And maybe he'll edit and revise and come out with a different version of it. I don't know. But yeah, I really enjoyed. If the author is watching this, thank you so much for reaching out. I will definitely be keeping an eye out for any further works you do, because like I said, I had a good time with both books. And just the biggest thing is the editing, I think, because that really like took me out of the story itself. So, but I had a great time with both books. But I loved Pets for Legion, and it definitely had 5-star potential if it was just had better editing. So, but yeah, that's it from me. I would love to know if any of you who are watching this have ever read um either of these books, or if you're interested in picking up these books. I would love to know that down below. If you just want to let me know you were here and you're watching and you're helping to support the channel by commenting, you could always leave a rabbit or maybe a cat emoji, because a cat does play a part in Pets for Legion. You can leave that or any type of animal down in the comments below. I'm going to go ahead and leave you guys here. Happy reading, everyone. Bye.